Welcome, everybody, to another exciting edition of the Triple B Experience. I have a great interview tonight. My special guest is a pro wrestler. He has wrestled all over this country and beyond. He has made his mark in every wrestling company in the Western Pittsburgh area. And he still laces up his boots if it deems necessary if he has to kick somebody's ass. But right now, he's given his knowledge, his wisdom to the future stars of wrestling at being the trainer at the Stronghold Training Center for Ryse Wrestling. It's my honor to bring in Mr. Dean Radford. Dean, how you doing this evening?
Bubba, what's shaking, bacon?
Oh, not much. We've been wanting to do this for such a long time.
I know.
And the planets have lined up.
That's
so how
right.
you doing, brother?
Oh, I can't complain. I get to wake up every day. Thankfully, I'm good.
That's good.
I'm over here mending a lovely torn rotator cuff right now, as you can see there.
Ooh, let's start with that. How did that happen?
Well, Bob, everybody's got to have a real job. So I was at work and I lifted up a side bay door on the truck. It jammed. My shoulder went pop, and next thing I know, I got torn rotator and a tear in my bicep. So,
oh my God! And
I'm on the mend, doing some therapy 3 days a week. It's all good stuff.
How long?
It's 4 to 6 months recovery, full recovery.
Ooh, well, I wish you the best, brother. Wow. You just
it.
never know because, age has a thing that you can't beat Father Time.
Yeah, I don't feel like I'm 20 anymore, but I still feel good. It's just crazy when things happen. Now I'm a big baby. I got, the guy stretches my arm out. I'm like, no. And he's like, suck it up.
And it's like when you used to stretch other people and it was so rewarding. Now you don't like it on the roles are reversed.
Right.
So let's get into everybody, including myself back in the day. What made you go into this business? What did you watch it when you were a kid, or how did you do that?
I mean, look, it's one of them things where watching it as a kid, a lot of us watched it as a kid. Late 80s is really when I started getting heavy into it. But when I was a kid, my brother would take me to AWA shows that would loop up between like Steubenville and then
wow.
They would hit Monongahela and actually run outside shows on the giant barge that's right there in town. And it's funny, I have a picture of Shawn Michaels when I'm like 4 years old holding me when he's just getting into business. And
wow.
I have a Superfly Jimmy Snuka shirt on, so who I was there to see.
Yeah. So I remember I seen some stuff about that when AWA was around the area, but you're like one of the first person that I ever talked to that actually went to them shows, and didn't get it through watching it on TV.
Yeah. I mean, I grew up in Elizabeth, so it was only a hop, skip, and a jump down the river to go to New Eagle. It was in New Eagle. And they would set up just like what we see now, man, big tents on the outside, carny shit. And, I have pictures from it too. Like there's, pictures of Big Scott Hall and stuff like that. Just the crowd of people that was there. Cause I mean, when they would loop through, it's not like how it is now. Like it's not so mainstream back then. So when it came through, it was still hot, hundreds of people. And I mean, back then there was no glitz and glamour. It was a giant tent you walked out of and through the sea of people, made your way up to the ring. And,
So you said your brother, did all your family members go too? It was like a family event when they were in town?
I mean, my dad was a millman, so he was always working pretty much, but we would watch wrestling together at night when it was on. But, my mom would take me when I was a kid too, whenever WWF started really hitting the arena and stuff like that. And Hulk Hogan was rolling through, which obviously, as you can see from the background, I may be a Hulkamaniac. I am a Hulkamaniac, damn it. I'm proud of it. And I don't care what anybody says.
Nothing wrong with that, brother. Nothing wrong with that.
Right here, you can see the lovely background of the Bruno jacket there, signed by Bruno. So, growing up, I loved wrestling and, just all just all aspects of it, But it was cool just being that young, going through, I mean, hell now, I don't remember going, but, that's why you take pictures. But, once a fan, always a fan.
And lately, people were complaining about people taking pictures, but you know what? Though, like you just
Sure.
said, it's hard. It's hard to remember places and
Yeah.
people at that time. And I don't mind doing pictures too and taking pictures with some of the guys. It's just, it's cool. It's something that you'll explain and elaborate on here further on in this interview. But it's something. So, how did you get the bug? You know, mom, dad, I want to do this.
Well, the bug was different for me. I really didn't think about it. My dad died when I was young, so I was like 13 when he passed away.
Okay.
So
All right.
those years between then and like when I became 18, was solely going to shows. I went to high school with Troy Lords and CJ Sensation.
Oh my
And
gosh. Wow.
yeah, so there you go. A little story there. But
Yeah.
it's funny because, as kids, we had that connection of wrestling. And, we went to, I went to the first PWX show whenever it was inside the mall. And also we went to Still City Wrestling with Norm.
Okay.
And Norm would run Sideshow Pizza that used to be out in Irwin. And that's where I got really, I want to say, closer to things, because that's where the itch kind of started. It was like, oh, Norm, what can I do? And it was like, well, you can't do anything. You're under 18. Cool. Well, want to set chairs up? Sure. You want to help with the ring? Sure. So I just started making friends with everybody. And at that time, like, Norm was bringing in, Mick Foley and a lot of the ECW guys, Blue Meanie and, and then a lot of guys from Maryland too, like people who don't get enough credit, like Q-Ball Carmichael and Lou Marconi, and Mike Quackenbush and the Mest brothers. I don't know if you ever met them, but
I know you're talking about, but I never met them in my journey. No.
It's just one of them things where there's so many people that I was able to get nice and close to, which initially started me being very close to someone like Shirley Doe, who eventually we'll get into was, one of my trainers. So, I obviously can't do back then. There was no, oh yeah, let's get a parent signature and then you can start doing stuff. I didn't start training until I was 18, but that's really where I'd say the itch started. Cause Norm saw, okay, well, you're a bigger dude. So why don't you stand there and do security? Okay. It was just for show, just to have someone with a security shirt on. So I did that, but the local, I don't want to say, everybody says, oh, I watched Hulk Hogan, right? And that's what made me want to do it. That's not what made me want to do it. That's what made me fall in love with it. Okay.
That's a different aspect of saying it, because for me, it was because I didn't have a local stuff in Indiana. It wasn't local like it is in the Pittsburgh area. So I had to watch it on TV and then go to some live shows with the bigger names, but independent didn't come until my mid-20s.
Yeah.
So you had a little bit heads up on me.
See, and it's so funny because like when I started going to the local shows is where I was like, wow, because you're so close to it, right? Mm-hmm. You don't have 1,000-yard view anymore. Now you have a 25-foot view. And, the guys like Sean Shocker Evans, rest in peace, brother. But it's just like seeing him and Vince Kaplak and guys like T. Ranchula and Dennis Gregory and, all the guys back then, that started off, and not too many people mention his name, but, B.A. Briggs was one of the big wrestlers in Pittsburgh for a while. He started the whole, just that PWX group. I know it wasn't run by him, but it was good to have him. He was like a face there. As a kid, I'm 13, 14 years old. So it's like, which in turn, Norm ended up coming in then, and, they were bringing in like Shane Douglas, Raven, and these guys were ECW champions at the time. So at that point, when I'm watching wrestling, I'm like, wow, these guys are on television and doing this. So it's a whole new ball game, right? Mm-hmm. But to have that level of the playing field and seeing it, like some kids do, man. When I lost my dad, I went through a rough time and I went on a spiral, right? After a few years of being a fucking idiot, my brother helped me, just kind of get some stuff right with high school so I can graduate.
Uh-huh.
And then I said, okay, this is what I want to do.
Well, I was going to ask you, did you play any sports being a bigger guy? You're working security. Did you play sports in school?
No, I didn't.
Really? Oh, see,
No.
I thought you did play some high school ball and stuff like that just by
Should
looking at
have.
you.
Growing up as a kid, I played baseball a lot,
Uh-huh.
and basketball for the school. But once I got high school and everything kind of felt like it was kind of like piling up on my shoulders, I just kind of like wanted to be around my friends. And after, going to school and then we'd go fishing and just hang out. And I didn't pursue anything. And looking back on it, I mean, you always got to look at would you change anything you did? No, because I did a lot of bad shit that helped me
it made you the person that you are today.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yeah.
And, that's what really, sometimes you got to take 10 steps backwards and move 3 steps forward. So I took about 20 steps backwards. But those 3 steps forward made it big for me because I got out of a headspace that I was in.
Uh-huh.
I was able to finish through high school, and then I was like, okay, now this is what I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to start.
But what was that deciding point to get you out of that headspace to get you to where you needed to be?
Life or death.
Ooh. Okay.
I was in a bad place at a young age, and that's when you're at a young age and you feel like the world's against you.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, you see more adults like that now than you do kids. But you either choose to get help or you choose to sit in a pit of misery. And I saw some light and was like, what the fuck am I doing? And got my shit together. And that was that. That was the uphill start right there. And
well, you said it was your brother older than you?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
He was fresh out of the military.
Okay.
Started getting going. So, there was a summer I went and lived with him because he lived in Texas for a little bit and, went out there, and then he ended up moving home after a bit. And once he came home, we just started working on me a little bit. And that's where wrestling came into play.
Oh, let's get to that. So
Yeah.
your brother helped you get through that time, which we all had some shit in our lives too. I mean, I had to, just as you did.
Sure.
And overcoming your, the loss of your dad would be tremendous. And I don't have the words to describe that because that is probably a huge thing.
Sure.
But it made you, who you are and given wisdom to everybody that you meet in your journeys. So you decided to go in that you wanted to do this.
Yeah. So the big push was, my brother is a war veteran. He was in Desert Storm.
God bless him.
And
God bless him for his service.
before he went to war, he was stationed in Georgia, and he was actually training a little bit with the Samoans down there. So
wow. Okay.
He got called to duty, right? So he's like, why don't you get off your ass and let's figure out this wrestling thing? And I was like, what wrestling thing? He's like, go be a wrestler. So, we put that together, and, he's like, I'm going to live my dream through you. And so
wow. Okay.
I ended up getting, at the time, in touch with T Ranchula. And he had an old school, I believe it was, down in Hayes, which is not too far from like West Mifflin and right outside the city. And he had his, ring in there. So I started training with T first before I got with Doe and Hentai. And so I trained with T for a while. And the cool part about it was, T's been in business for 50 fucking years, right? So
I just saw him last week.
Right. So it's I told him he's like fine wine now. He's aging perfect. That's how he wants to do, because he's got his body fixed up and he's working easy. So but it's one of those things where I started training with him, and he would have, like, at the time, like, Matt Bourne would come down all the time.
Oh geez.
Right.
Wow.
So he would come down there, and those are the days where it's like, okay, run the ropes. I just, I started puking all over myself. Not me, but you start puking all over yourself, and it's like, okay, well, keep fucking running, or we all got to start over.
Yeah, none of this. It was hardcore back then. None of this, like, oh, are you okay? Can you do it now? Yeah,
not this bullshit. But it's funny too, because like, it was probably one of the height of Matt's, like, it was after Doink, so he was in some of those dark areas, but
Ooh.
it was still good to pick his brain because, even though those guys get into a bad spot, they still got a mind for the business.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's kind of like the same as Jake the Snake,
Right.
that dude, his mind for the business is crazy. But, Matt would come down and I'd pick his brain a little bit. And, yes, I saw some good times with him and bad times with him, but, it was still an honor to have him there and him wanting to be there. And I don't know if that was an escape for him. Again, some people find ways to get away from demons if they need a day or whatever. But, and then Shane would come down a little bit. Shane Douglas would come down a little bit. So it was a nice, interaction. So I trained with T for a while, and, T, no disrespect, with T, you learn how to wrestle like a big guy, right? That's T's stuff, right? And I'm not saying it wasn't great because I learned a lot from T.
Mm-hmm.
But after some stuff happened, and he also had Brian O there, which, yeah, he's fucking garbage. But anyways, some shit happened after I got done training where, Brian being Brian, he can't stand anybody having any hierarchy on him. So he took
I got you.
me, and in a match, what kind of fucked me up. And I was like, yeah, fuck him and fuck everybody else. So I ended up, I was still talking to Norman going to shows, and he's like, just why don't you come train here? It's, better.
So when you did that, did you catch any heat from you leaving one place and going somewhere else and train? You don't have to say, but
if I can remember, I want to say there was a point in time where T pulled me aside and he said, brother, don't forget where you came from originally. And I said, I get it, because I was doing a couple things and they was like, where did you train, this and that and the other? And I said the IWC training school. But it was one of those things where I was like, yeah, you're right, no disrespect. So I don't mind, dropping T's name on anything, because I did learn a lot from T. The F&W shows he ran, and all the people I met there were great people. And it's one of those things where, everybody who trains you, I guess you hold a piece of them in your,
mm-hmm. Yeah,
in your
a little bit of like you feel honored that they helped you out, and just that little bit of gratuity, kind of. Yeah,
right. Because hey, T's not a shot in the dark. He had his time on television, and he was
absolutely right.
And everything else, and he's done a shit ton of stuff. He's traveled the world and done stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I can't say he's the best driver, especially when Zoltan's in the car, but no, I ended up talking to Norm, and Norm was like, listen, get your stuff back together. And this is right about where
what year do you think this was?
So this was, God, I want to say like 2001.
Early. That's what I was thinking. Early 2000. Yeah.
Yeah. Troy Lords finished training because he trained with T also.
Okay.
So he finished training with him, and then he started wrestling for IWC. And so it was like, okay, I had to take time off to heal. So got healed up, and then they were like, okay, well, Norm was like, just, come down, train the IWC school, which, funny enough, was the same ring in the same building that T had his school in, because T's, so I'm like, cool, we're back at this shithole in Hayes. Perfect.
So you had it on Thursday, and then Wednesday T was doing it. Thursday you had IWC training. It was all in the same building. Oh, right.
Right, exactly. So it was fantastic.
That's funny. Now, let me ask you a question, because you said Lords and CJ and all you guys. So you guys were all talking during school and stuff like that about, hey, we're doing this, and when we do it, you guys are all pretty tight, or?
Oh yeah, it's so funny too, because we, just like most kids, we had our own backyard thing, but we were like, we're not going to do this fucking shitty backyard thing. We're going to make it look as professional as possible. And so this one guy, his name was Brian Evans. We used his basement to make an arena, built a ring in his arena, and we had an entranceway, lights, music, smoke, everything, the whole 9 yards. And, at that point in my life, ECW is like hard going, right? So it's funny because like we would have fans there and we would have pay-per-views,
Oh,
and
wow.
people would pay to come see it. And I'm sure there's a video somewhere I could share with you at some point. But it's funny because like people were going through tables and people were doing, off the top rope and like all this
How
stuff.
big is this guy's building?
Oh, his basement was huge.
Oh my God! To go
He had
off
a
to
nice house. So,
okay.
but the ring was probably like 10 by 10. It was only like an inch off the floor, and everything was mattresses. So
Oh wow.
we were doing our thing there and coming into our own, and even though never even been trained yet, but then at that time was right about towards the end was when CJ started training at PWX.
Okay.
And so he was showing us some stuff. But at one point, I think I may have gigged in that basement. I don't know. It's
holy shit. So you guys are making money selling tickets, making money. Oh my God, that's awesome. I never heard this one. This is a good story.
It was funny.
Wow.
So I'm sure I have a video somewhere. But we were friends from there, and then
oh wow.
What a rush.
Yeah, that's how I wake up in the morning.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, but no, and like I said, Captain, CJ went first. He was a PWX, and then Troy finished, and he was at IWC. And this isn't this. I'm not,
right.
I'll talk shit on whoever I want to talk shit to their face. I'm not saying this in a bad way. When I saw what Norm was doing and what they were doing, it's not the path I wanted to go. I'd rather go, IWC opposed to PWX route. So,
and there's nothing wrong with that. No, so nothing wrong with that at all.
No, and I'm not saying that before anybody gets their keyboards hot. I'm not saying that in a bad way.
Well, yeah.
But I could make you have your keyboard hot later. So, but the whole thing was, people were trained over there, and then so I was like, okay, so I started training with Shirley Doe and Super Hentai, and occasionally Devil Budokan was there, and
okay.
Another guy who doesn't get his flowers is Devil Budokan. Like Devil Budokan is the person who showed me how to do a moonsault off the second rope. So it's one of those things where ask Lee Moriarty who taught him how to do a moonsault. It's one of them things where the training was great, and since I already had rapport with Shirley Doe and more with Doe than Hentai, just from knowing Doe for many years, and then Hentai coming along, obviously we have good rapport and still friends to this day.
Right.
I had the privilege of them letting me come in and get the rust off. And then I had looked at myself and I'm like, okay, cool. So I felt like I learned the best of what I could learn from the biggest guy in Pittsburgh. Now I'm learning from Doe, who was, we'll call,
but Doe had a lot of ring psychology, though.
Large, but not the largest guy, and he had great ring psychology.
Yes.
And
he doesn't get his credit either. I don't think.
No, not at all. Doe is fantastic. And the amount of stuff that he's put into anything he's touched in Pittsburgh or anywhere he's gone, he's such a smart guy. And, his thought process and everything he does. And I just, I love Sam to death. I do. Doe, sorry.
That's okay.
But Hentai also, like, I didn't know Hentai too well when I first got there. But once I started seeing, that's when Norm started like Super Indie and everything else. And I got to see everything he was doing. There was just so many minds at that point in time that were fantastic. They were doing great things with that school. And when I first went in there was when they were training, like Jason Gorey just started, Shima, Joaquin Wild in WWE now just started. And so that was cool to be there with those guys because I was, by far, I'm not saying I trained them at all, but I was there to help at least give them any feedback. And, we all worked together, which is really cool.
It was a team concept because you guys were trying to get where you needed to be and everybody was doing good. And you're like, hey, if I'm doing something bad, please tell me because I would do the same thing to you. So, I understand that.
I think who else was there? There was another person. All the trainers always have the guy who takes all the bumps for them, right? Glenn Spector was there. So Glenn was just getting into the heat of his stuff. I think it was right after he was about to lose his mask or whatever, and start wrestling without a mask with IWC. But Doe and Hentai, I trained with them, and it was almost about a year before I then finally debuted for IWC. But Doe and Hentai, I again can't thank enough for the efforts that they put into me, not just as trainers, but friendship.
Right. So it took you. You said you had a whole year before you actually had your first match.
It was
for
about
IWC?
a year, yeah, and then I ended up debuting. God, was it like 2001, 2002? So it's about 2002. At the end of 2002, God, I want to say November, but I can't remember. It was me, Devil, and Jake Garrett, I believe, versus Bubba the Bulldog, Trevor Lowe, and somebody else. And it was a show at the McKeesport High School. And forgive me, I can't remember the other person. But that was my first match in IWC. And so, it was funny because it was like a 3-year bend before I actually started training with T, and then actually debuting with IWC.
Yeah, because now people just go out in 2 weeks and they're like, "Oh, I'm ready." Wow. Okay.
Yeah. In between, I worked a few shows down in West Virginia. We all go to West Virginia because there's no timetable on anybody how old you are.
Right.
I remember walking in and it was some shit show. I know Ben or Potter would know what the hell the name of it was, but they were like, "We're taping this for TV in North Carolina and blah 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 and blah, blah, blah. And because you're under 18, you're gonna have to wear a mask." And that's where I officially debuted as the Ultimate Solution, which was fantastic.
I like that.
So it was funny because I was going to run with that, and
Why didn't you?
Well, because some big powerhouse-looking son of a bitch showed up on WCW for the Dungeon of Doom, named the Ultimate Solution with his face painted.
There with that gimmick right out the fucking oh, that sucks.
Yeah. But it's funny because everybody was so, oh man, you call yourself. So it's funny because I have so many people that always say this to me. They're like, oh man, you've always called your the finisher of the Eradicator. I do the Death Valley Driver. Mm-hmm. And they're like, I bet you Sterling went and told Rhea Ripley that I'm going to call you the Eradicator. I'm like, oh, will you stop it? Give it a break. There's so many people that sit there and they see something on TV like, that's because I did it, and somebody saw it and they passed it along.
Right.
Whatever, bro.
That's funny. And some people think like that too. I mean, that's So, so you were in IWC.
Yep.
And how long was you in? You were a mainstay at IWC, if I remember correctly. You were, because you were in all the, you know what I mean. Now, what was your first? You probably got some title shots. I don't know if you remember your first title. I mean, some people might. Do you remember your first title match?
I do. First, was it a title match or was it a qualifier? My first anything into the title picture, I believe, and I could be totally wrong on this, was against in a Super Indie qualifier, I think, because at that time the Super Indie was a big thing because the belt, whoever won the tournament was the champion, right?
Mm-hmm, right.
So that was against Cole Cabana, and I can honestly say that people talk about how good Colt is, but even back then it was like, dude, thank you for carrying my ass. Because at that point, I had never really done that fast pace. Everybody wants to put in something to breathe, this and that. And another was like, no, we got 8 minutes. We're going out there. We're going to go, and it's going to bing, bang, boom, and there's the finish. And that was a whole different style then, because, Ring of Honor style, East Coast style, people like to say is, it's a lot of high spot, flashy shit. Ring of Honor was out there, and, with ECW, everything was all high spot, right? So, me being a bigger guy, had to incorporate coming off the top rope and doing a lot of stuff. But with Colt, it was, we're going to work and we're going to wrestle. And I was like, cool. And, but there was like, okay, where you want to do double down? We're not. We're going straight through. Cool, even better. So that was the first time where I got to the back and I was kind of like, whew, all right, that was fun. Which he's a great guy. So, he was very helpful in taking me along through that journey in that match. The first real actual title shot that I got was the beginning of the feud with Sterling, champion, and it was him and CM Punk were together, and there was another person, I think, might have been Karina's sister, I think, Allison Danger, but they were like, they weren't really stable, but they were together,
Right.
And that was in, I can't remember the year. The show was in Hopewell. It was me and Sterling. And then a lot of hoopla, which is kind of crazy, right? Because it's funny because I'm sitting there like, oh, yeah, Sterling and I went out there and the finish was CM Punk interrupted and then Raven made the save. And who says that shit?
You can because it's true.
Yeah, it was fun. But that was the beginning of our feud. And then we went a few more matches. Then finally I went over for the title at a show at CCAC South Campus in West Mifflin, which there was like 600 people in that show, man. There was a ton of people there. I still get goosebumps whenever that little piece plays and, the crowd erupts and just winning the belt for the first time. Everybody remembers the first time they won a belt.
Right. Yep.
Like,
yeah.
I still get goosebumps when I see that.
Was your family in the house? Was your family?
Oh, man. As Kingdom James would say, I was phoning in with the MCI or whatever the hell he would say, because I was phoning a friend, because that's the only people that came to see me was family and friends. I remember he dropped that on a commentary line the one time. I laughed. But no, you know what? I can honestly say all the years wrestling, like I always had a nice, strong following. Friends and family were very supportive. At least probably like 15 to 20 every show would come out, and it was key. And I try and tell people nowadays, like, I don't want to say it's not like a plant, but it is a plant, because, whether you're face or a heel, you got to let people know when they're coming, like, don't be a dickhead, go with the flow. Like, if I'm the bad guy, then be the first person to boo me so the next person catches on, and getting that wave. And it was clutch, because you get 20 people cheering for you. The 150 that's in there that's going to cheer next is the thing that creates magic, whether you're a good guy or bad guy. So I try and tell these people nowadays, I'm like, market yourself out there, get your friends and family to come. Is it 5, 10 people? It doesn't matter. Get people in the audience that you can manipulate to your advantage.
And what do these guys tell you when you tell them that?
Oh, people are too busy. They don't want to pay the prices. Can I get comps? No, lazy ass.
Well, and we're going to talk about that here later on. But now I wanted to get to this title match. Did your brother show up? Did he? Because it's an important match, and maybe he couldn't make it due to the fact that maybe he lived far away. I mean, that's cool too. But maybe he called you or whatever, because he is one of the guys that you said, he's living vicariously through you.
So, yes, he was there.
Awesome.
And I, somewhere on camera, after I won and I went down into the crowd a little bit, I went over to him and they caught me giving him like a giant fucking hug and, embracing that moment there. And
that is a moment. That is a moment. Yeah, that's a huge moment.
I got chills.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can see that.
I got chills for you on this side, because I know what it's all about when one of your family members supports you wholeheartedly and they see the fruits of your labor, and that is something huge. you know, and
Yeah.
that's awesome.
Yeah, it was great. There was a lot of times where, you know, my mom would always go to shows, even though she was scared to death I was going to get hurt. She would always go to shows.
I understand. My mom was the same way.
And, you know, just cousins and whatever would go to shows, friends of their friends. And, you know, and then my sister would be there all the time too, which, you know, she ended up ultimately becoming my biggest fan. And, you know, there was, I don't know if you've ever seen one of the guys that did the video work for IWC. His name was Tony Fury. He did the video work. Actually, he went to high school with us also. We all got into wrestling somehow.
Oh my God, that was a high school.
But he did Elizabeth Fuller, baby. So he did the video work for Norm for a very long time. But he made a video whenever I was leaving because I was moving to Arizona, and he had pictures and that thing that, like, the things that he captured will just sit in my heart forever because, you know, my years later, a couple years, or about, I think 10 years. I can't remember how long it's been now, but my sister passed away with cancer. So
okay,
it's one of them things where there's like a slowed down shot and I'm on the apron, or I'm on the second rope doing my thing, and she's sitting there with her arms up in the air, just cheering away, and it's good shit, you know.
good. That is good shit. So you had this vignette. You were leaving to go to Arizona, and I know you worked out that way. So how did that became to be?
Whew. Well, you know, it's funny because, and I got to give Norm props on this one because, you know, Norm has always kind of guided me in doing things. And the one thing he taught me a long time ago, and he actually said this on the microphone the night that I had my final match before leaving with CJ Sensation, you know, is the biggest thing, first things first, it's important, is family, right? And the second thing is a job.
Yeah.
Wrestling should be third because without the first two, there is no wrestling, right? And I had a pretty good job, and I had an opportunity to move out there, and I took it because honestly, I was fucking done with Pittsburgh. Too many cooks in the kitchen, too many people trying to cut each other's fucking heads off. And that's
the wrestling. Are you talking the wrestling?
That's just the wrestling business.
Okay, yeah.
That's not personal. There's
yeah.
more shit there too. And I was just like, fuck this. Like I was
blame
done,
you.
right? I was done. And I was like, you know what? Maybe I need a change. So we moved, my wife and I, we moved out there and got out there.
Oh, see, I didn't know. See, I thought you went out by yourself. See,
No.
I did not know that. Okay.
At that time, she was my fiance. We wasn't married yet. She went out. I went out a couple weeks, and then she came out with me. And so we lived in Tucson. And let me just tell you that at that time, wrestling was just the dog shits of wrestling I've ever seen in my life. You know, there's no commission out there.
Oh,
so,
God.
Oh yeah, everybody's a fucking wrestling promoter. So after I got settled in and got my job together and doing what I'm doing, I'm like, okay, now I can see. Sorry, I adjust this thing. What's next for me, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there was a show, and I was like, you want to go check this out? And she's like, are you going to wrestle? And I was like, well, yeah, I want to wrestle, but I'm not just going to wrestle for anybody. I've never just wrestled for anybody, you know? One thing I learned a long time ago is you don't have to have 1,000 matches for anybody to notice you. You have to have consistency for people to notice you. There's a difference. So got out there and went to this show, and they tried. The guys were trying.
Okay.
And
did you think you could give them a little your knowledge of what you know? Do
you think you could? At first, I'm like, okay, maybe this is a new point in chapter of my life where I can help these guys. Until the main event got up, and it was a ladder match.
Oh,
and this guy took a shot from a ladder. He rolled to the outside, and the commentator, who then I found out is the promoter, walked over to him, kneeled down, and went,
"Oh shit!"
And then he walked back to the commentator's booth, and I was like, "Let's go." She's like, "Did he just?" I said, "Yep, let's go." I was like, I'm done here.
Holy shit.
So that was it for me. I was like, well, I'm done. Never wrestling again. I've seen enough. I'll
Yeah.
figure it out some other way. But moving to Arizona was also a very humbling experience because I think I had put something up. I'm going to date myself on MySpace. And so Jake Garrett got me hooked up with Chris Cole. And because Chris Cole had been out in Arizona and worked out there for a while. And so he hooked me up with talking to a guy that was in Phoenix, which was like 2 hours from where I was. And so I got a hold of him. He's like, yeah, come on up. We got a show, this and that, another. His name was Navajo Warrior.
Yes, I've seen him a lot on your a lot of respect, mad props on your social
Yes.
media with him. Yes.
That guy, I'll dive into that later. But this guy is like, he's the guy. He's the guy. Like, I can't even say anything else. He's the guy in Arizona that, through the 90s and stuff like that, early 2000s, he was booked with WWF, WWE, had all the connections to where when they came into town, they went to him, for some guys and things like that. And out in Arizona, there's a lot of guys who were in the original OVW that were under contract that live now in Phoenix and didn't continue contracts and stuff. There was guys who wrestled in Madison Square Garden in the main event under a fucking mask because they couldn't get someone's flight in, and they're not even there anymore. But they wrestled in Madison Square Garden in the main event, So, so I get up there and I walk in, and I'm so used to, I guess, and this is the one thing, like being out here, I was so used to being around the same people that knew me, and you walked in, and I never walked on eggshells ever.
You don't have to. You never have.
No. And when I walked in and I started looking around, I'm like, wow, I am a small fish in a big pond again. And the reason why the pond was so big is because all these guys were either signed before, or like I look across the way and there's Val Venus sitting there, and I'm like, oh shit, like what is going on? So I end up hooking up with him. And when I say him, I mean Navajo Warrior. And I said, did you want me to work? And he's like, oh no, brother. I need video. I need a picture and your gimmick. And I was like, oh, okay. And just like every prepared worker should, it was in my trunk. So I went out and got some stuff. And so I gave him a CD with some matches on it and gave him a couple promo pics. And he's like, okay, well, go ahead and enjoy the show. I'll talk to you after. And I'm like, okay. So, we sat and watched the show. And at that time, who was there? A lot of California guys.
Yeah, because it's a short jump from California there. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So I was like, oh man, like, did Chris Cole not give me a good recommendation? Was he like, hey, do me a favor, just give this guy 50 seconds of your time? Am I fucked out here? Like, but no, he gave me a great recommendation. And so after the show, I went to talk to him. He's okay, yeah, I'm gonna look at it and then I'll get back to you. And I was like, well, okay, I appreciate your time. So in my head, I'm like, fuck, why did I just drive up here? Because, and again, you get used to stuff like that as far as like being, everybody knows you, So went home. It didn't take too long. He got a hold of me. He's like, okay, we're going to have you on the next show. We're going to put you.
Wow. So that was a weight off your shoulders.
Yeah. Huge weight.
Yeah.
But then he's like, okay, we're going to put you in a tag match. They're doing this tag tournament. And at the time, I believe the company was called RPW. Rising Phoenix Wrestling, I think is what it was. I ended up getting put into a tag team with a guy named Black Metal, and he was from California, which actually I believe he went on. He's in Nacho Libre.
Oh,
He's one of the
okay.
wrestlers in Nacho Libre. One of the main wrestlers. I can't remember, but a lot of California guys meeting for the first time. Another guy who I ended up meeting, he was a huge influence in not only making me look good out there, but becoming one of my best friends too, was Hawaiian Lion.
Okay.
Hawaiian Lion wrestled for New Japan, all one of the two. I can't remember. Either way, he wrestled Muda. So
Okay. Yeah.
like,
Okay. That's yeah.
well, he was in Japan and he did stuff. And the one thing I noticed was the fans were a lot different out there. So we get into this tag match. We go out there. I start doing my thing, and I've always gone up and done an elbow off the top and this and that and the other. And as I'm going up to do that, I notice people like, and they start to go get popcorn and shit. And I'm like, the fuck? What hell am I doing here? So I went through the match, and we finished the match, got to the back, and I asked, Navis, what'd you think? He's like, it's the shits. I was like,
Oh no.
oh, okay, why? And he's like, that East Coast style ain't gonna work out here, brother. And I was like, he's like, do you know how to work? And I was like, yeah. So he's like, well, you gotta work. This is old school out here. So it's like NWA style. Like they want a good heel, a good face, and work a hold and interact with the fans. And I was like, oh, fuck. Okay, cool. So I had to make a big transition on everything I did out there.
How long was that transition? How long did it take you? Probably not that long.
Not long. It was just a couple shows just to feel them out and doing different stuff. And then that company didn't last too long, but Nav ran his own company called IZW, which they ran every other Tuesday night at a concert / bar.
Wow, every Tuesday. Okay, every other Tuesday.
Yeah. So, and that's on top of like other shows like on the weekends and stuff like that. So I was at the point when I was out there, I was working probably about 3 to 4 times a week, every other week. It was crazy.
Wow,
A lot of work.
You're doing more out there than you are back here.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yep. So a lot of lucha shows out there too. And I remember the first Lucha Libre show I did where it wasn't like, the mainstream AAA or anything like that. It was 3-on-3, no tags, in and out, bing, bang, boom. And that's when I was like, okay, I need to get my cardio up a little bit better. Like it was crazy, but it was good. The money was good. And, then I ended up being around a lot of older, like Lucha Libre guys, which was cool. So, I ended up getting in with Nav and wrestling for his IZW company, which they closed down for a while, but they actually just opened up.
When did you know that you were in with him? How did you know that it's all going good now and you don't have to, you knew that,
I got paid.
Gotcha.
I got paid. There was a lot of trips up there at first where you weren't on the payroll. You're still trying to make your mark. And I was like, wow, okay. So there was a guy who lived in in Tucson, which again ultimately ends up becoming one of my best friends. His name's Frenchie Riviera, and he's well, it's funny. He's notorious for having I believe he's on the sign. I could be wrong about this, but there's a picture of Abdullah over his head like this with a fork. And I believe it was on Abdullah's Ribs restaurant sign. But
I've heard of him.
He's from Georgia. And so he was living out in Arizona. But he had done a lot, and so old Southern boy hooking up with an East Coast boy, and we were like mashed potatoes and gravy. It was great. But I was riding with him. And thankfully, I'm like, hey, man, I give you some gas money. He's like, nah, don't worry about it. You're not getting paid to come up yet, so don't worry about it. And I'm like, I appreciate it. So, and that's what the business needs more of, the helping hand, opposed to the go fuck yourself hand.
Yeah, I agree with you on that. Yeah.
He didn't have to do that for me. So I was riding with him. And then there was another guy, too, that gave me a couple rides, too, up there. His name was AJ. But I finally, started to connect with Nav, because I'll be honest, like, I got shy, and I don't know why. I saw so much talent around me, and I was
Well,
like,
could you been shy because when you were on this side of the country, you knew everybody. You know what I
sure,
mean. It's a little different when you go play. I mean, I was
huge,
like that when I went to Florida, but I mean, you're going into a place where you don't know, and
right?
you're trying to meet people. So yeah, I mean, I could see that being a little apprehensive at first.
Yeah, and one of the big things too was, um, just I didn't want to piss anybody off. These guys, I'm walking into their territory, you know, and I'm walking into their lake and their fans, and I'm just another body who's, and you've heard this a million times, essentially taking over somebody else's spot, right?
Right.
So it's like you get a lot of eyes like, who's the new guy? Where's this fucking guy from? Never heard of him. Like one of those things. But it was it took a couple shows to I've just started getting really comfortable
Okay.
in wrestling, and I found myself going under a lot, which is fine, whatever. Winning and losing and losing in wrestling, it doesn't fucking matter.
Right. I agree.
Some people take that shit to heart. It's
Yeah.
you know, it's a gimmick, brother. But I'd probably say after a solid month, and again, every other Tuesday, there's a couple shows under your belt right there, and I'm like, okay, I got a long road, so I just started picking people's brains, and I was like, don't you got to practice what you preach. Like, you've done so much here, what are you going to do out here? So I just started picking people's brains, like, went up to Nav, found out he's a fucking Hulkamaniac. So, boom, red and yellow clashing together, being friends. But it ended up there was a lot of really cool guys out there that I'm happy to call my friends. That made me feel at home, and I'd say after the first 6 months, everything was just a cycle. Then I was just one of the boys, and then eventually it got to the point where he had enough, respect for me, that thinking that I was good enough to where they ended up putting the title on me out there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
ended up running that, which then in turn, and again, this is why you don't burn bridges. Like, years before in IWC, there was almost a huge collaboration in Japan with IWC. And a guy by the name of Mackie was trying to run ship because Doe had gone to Japan, and Spectre was over there for a little bit. I think the Gambinos went too. I can't remember, but we were trying to do this big thing. I remember recording a promo. I think it was me, Hentai, Doe, Sterling, and Sebastian Dark cutting a promo about how we're going to come over there and fuck all their women and fuck their faces. It was absurd, but it never happened. Just like 90% of the wrestling business, you get promised, it never happens.
Yep.
You
I agree. Yep.
But ended up hooking up with Mackie and actually getting over to Japan and taking the titles with me, which was cool.
Nice.
And so I was the IZW champion and the NWA Arizona heavyweight champion at the time.
Wow.
So I
That's
was over
awesome.
in Japan with that. And yeah, it was great. Good time over there. I can't thank Mackie enough. He treated me like a king.
How long was you over there?
It was only about probably like a week and a half that time, because
Doesn't matter though, because you made it to some places where I mean, I've never made it there. So I mean, God bless. I mean, that's huge. That's the Mecca.
Sure.
That's yeah. So that's awesome. I didn't
Yeah,
know.
it was cool. And, just being around the culture and everything else, it was just fantastic, and then, coming back, and it was craziness. I was probably out in Arizona for about 4.5 years.
4 years, 4.5 years total living out there.
Living out there.
Okay.
But, you know, it's one of them things where you learn to appreciate people for value of a human being. You know, there's times where this business gets in your head and makes you believe you're a lot bigger than you are, you know, which is hard for a lot of people because you technically want to train yourself to be the best, and that's fine. But you also have to understand your positioning on the card and how much it means, right? So, which we'll get into a little bit that later of teaching the youngins nowadays when we talk about Ryse. But you know, the key thing that I learned was you have to be versatile in what you're doing because maybe one thing won't work and you need to go and do the other, you know? So if I didn't know how to get on the mat and know how to work, thank you, Super Hentai Shirley Doe, then I would have been screwed, you know? But again, if I didn't know how to do moonsaults and all the big shit that T taught me, I wouldn't have done shit out here either. So it's I have a nice,
repertoire of knowledge that can
yeah, I
base
got
on any.
knowledge
Yeah.
from a bunch of different sides. And then when I went out there, the biggest thing that I learned was, you know, the way Nav ran TV was like, you know, preparing guys for TV. And, you know, Justin Roberts was out there. He had just left to go to WWE not too soon before I got there. He was doing stuff out in Arizona. So he went to WWE and was ring announcer, and now he's at AEW, you know. And I can't tell you the level of respect of what these guys have for Navajo Warrior. Not only just everything he does for people, but just for what he's done in the business is through the roof, man. Like I'm very thankful not only to have him as like a mentor, but also like family, you know. And to this day, even with training stuff, I'll send him stuff and I'll say, "What do you think of this?" And he'll give me his straight critique. There's no bullshit to it. It's not like, "Oh, hey, you're doing a great job." No, tweak this, tweak that, or that looks good. Do this, do that. And that's what you need out of people who you become friends with in the wrestling business. And technically, you're not supposed to have friends in the wrestling business, right, Bubba?
You're absolutely right. Because everybody thinks they're somebody and they want to be, but it's not. Yeah, it's few and far between. No, I mean, it's something that it's to me, it's so respectful. Like when you go, it's just I can't put it into words how I get treated when I go to shows or do whatever I do now. I get treated better than my own job going into the building and my coworkers saying I don't get a goddamn high or whatever, or
Right.
or where I'm at in my job with what I do for a living. But the wrestling business, the fans, the wrestlers, everybody, it's just so it's hard to explain. It really is.
Yep. I agree. And you know what? I'm gonna just side note too, it's the little things that make you feel great, you know. I was having a conversation, hopefully he doesn't get mad, but I was having a conversation the other day with Gregory Iron. You know, Greg, handicapped hero. I've known him for such a long time. Obviously, him and Gargano and all those guys came into IWC, and you know, him and I were shooting shit about, again, fellow Hulkamaniac. You know, we never knew the whole time we wrestled each other, and then later in life, it's like, wait, you like Hulk Hogan? Because I was like selling one of the things I had or whatever. I inquired about him selling something. He's like, "Oh, you like Hulk Hogan?" Yes, I like him. I fucking love Hulk Hogan. So, but you know, that brought us a different bond together. And then you know, him and I were just talking, and you know, he made notion of like the level of respect and how high he held me because of where I was when he first came in, and you know, that I was considered like one of the big dogs of getting in. I'm like, Jesus Christ, like kind of blew me back a little bit. You know, I never looked at it that way. Nor did I ever think he looked at me that way. And he's a great guy. If anybody ever gets a chance to listen, I don't know if he's doing his podcast anymore, but he's got a ton.
He does a ton of stuff. I know he was doing it there for a while, but when he was doing it, he was doing good stuff. I think he might have took a little sabbatical, but he's probably going to get back into it. Like every podcasting can burn you out real easy, though.
Right.
Yeah.
But you know, just so many great people over the time that I met. But you know, just to kind of put the icing on the cake for Arizona. When I was out there is actually when I went through the time when my sister passed away. And I was out there, and the company I was working for was kind of going through some stuff, and they were like, she had passed away, and they were like, well, we're going to take some offices off the West Coast, so we're going to give you a couple choices. And I'm like, okay. They were like, you can either move to Albuquerque, Denver, Milwaukee, or back to Pittsburgh. And I was like, I'm going to go back to Pittsburgh. I figured I kind of had a hole in my heart at that point.
That's understandable too.
Yeah. So I wanted to move back to Pittsburgh. And so I ended up moving back to Pittsburgh, which, I still keep in touch with a lot of guys that I made friends with out in Arizona. Nav and I talk almost every day. I talk to Lion every so often. Another guy that's like a brother to me, Jay Garland, he's out there. Another piece of talent that I couldn't believe never got signed. Like, there's so many guys in Arizona with so much talent that I can't believe they never got signed. But it's good to still keep in touch with people being out here. So I came back to Pittsburgh, and I came back to IWC. No longer the Norm era. It was the Chuck Roberts era.
What was the difference?
Egos. And, it was, I just didn't fit in at that point. Everything.
Wait, you didn't fit in. You went to Japan. You went to Arizona and did all that.
Yeah.
And which you were working, like you said, 3 to 4 nights a week. But when you come back home, you don't fit in. But wherever place else you went, you fit in.
Yeah, it was different.
Okay.
The people who were the locker room leaders were no longer there. They had moved on to different areas. Whenever just because there's a title on a company doesn't mean it's the same company. It's a different owner. It's a different vision, right?
Gotcha.
So there was I came back normal me, how can I help? It's always, how can I help? And there was a couple things that Chuck was not too happy about. I started blaming me for stuff, and I'm not one for anybody poking me in the chest. So
I hear you. You don't have to explain yourself to me. Yeah,
there was a moment where him and I did not see eye to eye, and I just told him, like, hey man, like, you poke me in the chest one more time, I'm gonna break your fucking finger. It's that simple. And Chuck Roberts is a great guy. Maybe not the best promoter, but he's a great guy. I've known Chuck for a long time.
Right.
And so we had our differences there. And at that point, when I came back, and it just didn't feel the same.
Something was off. Something was off then.
And I didn't know if it was me, and I didn't know if it was just wrestling in general. Still going through with the stuff with my sister, not having her out there for the shows was a big difference for me. And so, I was like, fuck you, I'm done. And he kind of gave me, you don't mean that. I do fucking mean it. I'm done. Like, I don't want to be here. And
how long was that when you said that though? You just came back, you moved back?
Yeah, we went a couple shows, and
oh wow.
It came down to there was a spot called in a tag match they was doing a lot of hardcore shit at that point. And somebody who just came back from a concussion called a spot, and hey, you're fucking calling it. It's your fucking funeral, not mine. So we went through with it, and I started getting a lot of shit about it. And that's basically, I was like, whatever, dude, because you're friends, you're going to take this out on me. It's fine. I'll be your scapegoat, but fuck you. Don't treat me that way. So I left. I was done with it at that point. I knew I was like, just not feeling it. Wasn't feeling how everything was running. And, that happens sometimes.
It does.
It is what it is. I don't hold any hard feelings. I will gladly tell you, like, if you can't take the truth, and if you can't tell me that there's people out there who can't take the truth, it's reality. I know that, but I'm very much a realist with things. So when I tell you that you're either fuck off or go fuck yourself, I mean it. That's just how it is.
There's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
More people should be like that.
Right. And so I left that night and I was like, fuck wrestling. Like, I don't even want to deal with it right now.
Oh, that bad. It got so bad where you didn't even want to you didn't want to work anymore.
No, because I was going to end up punching somebody in the face. I was like, this is just not going to work out. And so I think I went, I'd be lying if I told you how long it went. But either way, at that point, a lot of people like Troy Lord, Doe, and others had gone over to a different company. And so I was sitting at home and I got a phone call later from Chuck and he's like, you don't mean it. Come on, come back. I said, no, I'm done. And so we parted ways. And then a couple months went by and I got a text message from Quinn.
Okay.
Quinn Magnum. And he's like, here, you're not wrestling. No, I'm not fucking wrestling. And I already knew that the stooge, BC Steele, had gotten his ear and was telling him, like, he's fucking you need to get him. He's free. He's free. And so I told Quinn, I said, I really don't have any fucking interest in wrestling. He's like, get the fuck out of here. I'm gonna do my Quinn voice. Get the fuck out of here. No,
that's pretty good.
You're not done wrestling. So he's like, why don't you just come down and watch a show? I was like, all right. He's like, we'll sit up in the bird's nest. And yes, it was for PWX. Again, it's whatever. You'd never be ashamed of where you worked.
No.
It's not your fault of what happens afterwards. But, I was like, whatever. So I went down and I met with him and we sat up in the booth up top over the arena and watched the show. And he's like, what do you think? And I was like, it's fucking terrible. He's like, good. That's what I thought you'd say. That's why I need you here. And I'm like, oh, here we go. Let's hear the pitch. So he pitches me this thing about coming in. It might have been an anniversary show. I can't remember. And it was going to feud with John Burton and all this jazz. And I don't know what it was, but something in me was like, I blame Quinn because he, and I'm going to laugh about this because,
I know what to do.
Quinn being an asshole knew exactly what to say, just like he always knows what to say to get somebody going. He's like, this is like Hulk Hogan going to WCW. Like, you're technically on the lines of crossing over and building this branch, brother. And rah, 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 rah. And I'm like, fuck you. Dare you jump on the Hulkamania train to me.
Yeah.
But, he was like, come in, do this, build you up, and you're going to be the face of the company. Okay. I didn't really care about any of that at that point. I told him, I said, just let me think about it. So
how long did he let you think about it?
I don't think it was like 24 hours. And I got a text. Well, what do you think? And I was like, fuck it. Let's go. He's like, seriously? Yeah, let's fucking do it. Whatever. So then I got a hold of BC and I was like, you're an asshole. So
now, if you went when you went over there, did that cause a little controversy? I don't know why it would, but it happens in the Pittsburgh.
Really. Again, I found myself walking into a locker room with a lot of guys who've put a lot of time in, and they knew exactly, if I wasn't friends with them already, they were looking at me like, oh, fuck, someone's losing a spot. Because it wasn't like I was just getting brought in to be the fucking next job guy.
Right.
And so, I went down there, did some stuff. Quinn ended up putting what the hell was it called? The Three Rivers belt on me. And had some really good matches. One of my favorite matches there was with Chris LaRusso. We had a couple matches together, but the culmination was the dog collar match, which him and I had, which was really good. And then after I got the title, had it for a while. I think I had it for like a year. And then I ended up doing like an 8-month program with Scotty Gash. We only touched each other like twice. And one was the promo to set everything up, and the other one was the match. And that's fucking storytelling.
Yeah,
that is fucking
Scotty's
storytelling, ladies and gentlemen.
yes, I always liked Scotty. Scotty was always something.
Yeah, good guy. And so the culmination was, I think it was a TLC match. It was, yes, that fucker powerbombed me onto a ladder. Yeah, off a ladder, onto a ladder, or onto chairs. I can't remember. Either way.
Was this in the? Is this in the place they do now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
The facility, whatever they call it.
Yeah. So we had that, and then I ended up going on to winning the heavyweight title, and then I hit kind of a roadblock. At that point, I was having a lot of issues with my hands. To the point when I wake up in the morning, they were just kind of like this, and my fist was like this, and I'd have to like rub it under hot water to loosen it up. And
what was that from?
I didn't know. I thought I fucked my neck up, and then I thought my shoulder was fucked up and everything. I went through all these tests. Finally came down to both my hands were like that, and they were like, "Ooh. Have you ever been checked for carpal tunnel?" And I was like, carpal tunnel? That's what old people get. I ain't got that shit. And they're like, let's run a test. So after getting checked for my neck, my shoulder, seeing if I had Tommy Johns in my elbow, finally it came down to I had very bad carpal tunnel in my hands. So I had to have surgery in both hands. And again, I got to that point where I'm like, what do I really need to do? I've never been one to be like, I need to have somebody's spot or I need to have a spot. Like, if I don't feel like I'm into it, I'm just like, maybe I'm done. Right. So we did the old big farewell. I was going to basically be done. And I wrestled Gannon at the anniversary show, which whenever we were there and we were doing things, the houses were big.
It was a lot of good stuff down there.
Yeah,
I pay attention. Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people. We were drawing good,
and you had good wrestlers on the show. That is that is a big key, people.
Yes, good wrestlers on the show.
Yeah,
but him and I ended up having a match, to where it was considered potentially my last match, so we called it that. And you look back on things like, I wish I wouldn't have called it that, but I wish I would have just bowed out instead of saying that, because obviously still wrestling afterwards. I get people like Norm who are like, I'm not coming to your next retirement match. But I will stand as I am the man who got Norm into the PWX building to watch that match after all those years.
Yeah, because he probably wasn't. Yeah, he wasn't coming in.
No,
he came in with a hoodie on and rushed in, or was it fanfare?
All I'm saying is, when I was upstairs, somebody rushed into the locker room looking for me, saying, Norm Carter's just walked in my building. Hell froze over. Okay. He ain't here for you, bud. So
yes. Well, I can't believe he didn't behind selling the cheese on the nachos, but hey, whatever.
Right. So, but yeah, I finished that up. Gannon, what an athlete. That guy.
Great talent. Such a great talent.
Him and Duke. I don't know what the fuck is going on. I can't believe they haven't been signed somewhere. And it kind of, I hate seeing, okay, so this is going to sound weird. Maybe you'll agree, maybe you'll disagree. There's a lot of talent that gets used, and now it's different because when they get used, they're on television. Mm-hmm. I hate seeing a guy who's 6'6", 6'7", 250, 270 pounds, whatever they are, jacked as a tag team, go on television and get fucking smoked by two smaller guys.
Yeah, that was not right. That's not right.
And I'm like, fuck, like, to me, they're doing their job, and I completely understand that. I'm not blaming them for anything, but when guys were enhancement talents back in the day, you weren't on TV because there was like 20 people you worked out beforehand, before any of the WWF Live stuff happened, and then you were lucky enough to get picked for a spot.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been a lot of people in Pittsburgh who have gotten a lot of spots.
Oh, I'm a big giant Bill Collar fan. Like I don't know
Sure.
why he's not.
He's another one.
The event, him. I've seen Money Shot on TV. Spencer
Sure.
Slade. I just don't know what it is with these higher ups in these companies that doesn't see the talent that you do, that I do, that we see it, and
Right.
they would be viable on TV all the
On
time.
one hand, I like how WWE does things with having, the groups of people go to the training center and run through what they consider their workouts, right? And seeing if they can hang. With how AEW just puts everybody on television, like for a long time there, and this is one of my biggest pet peeves, and a lot of people do it, and I'll ask your opinion on this. I can't fucking stand when people take a picture backstage in front of the company's logo and then puts it on social media. You're not signed. You're getting a $200 to $500 paycheck to get squashed on television. And then everybody's like, congratulations. What are you congratulating them on? They're not fucking signed. So why are you taking pictures in front of their promo segment area or the logos of their company?
I think it's a different time now, because I know when Dr. Feelgood, did some stuff for WWE, there was he didn't like stand in front of something and snap a picture. He didn't do that. And he had to go to Buffalo and all these other places,
Right.
because they made him do that. So he wasn't being able to wrestle in Pittsburgh.
Right.
They weren't giving it to him. It took him a long time, but he didn't do that. I give props for that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But yeah, it's just, I think it's a different time.
Pictures when I was backstage, like it was frowned upon, right? And yes, we live in a different era of things now. Everything is get your phone out and take a picture. I get it.
Mhm.
But either way, with the company, like, I don't know. I feel like it's making you look fake. Taking a picture in front of that company, if you're not signed and you're just getting a paycheck because you're the guy for that flavor of the week, like, and then you've been there 10 times and you haven't been signed yet, how's that picture of that logo treating you? That's kind of how I look at it. And as a worker, I wouldn't want to have 10 different pictures in front of that logo without a contract at the end of the rainbow, because then you're showcasing the fact that you are just the guy they can go to when they're in town to get a clean match for somebody else that they're paying on a contract. So they're not technically looking at you as, we can sign this guy. It's let's get this guy because we know he can go in there and put this guy over. And he looks good,
I don't disagree with what you're saying with that. No.
So, but again, no harm, no foul. If people want to do it, it's not something personally I look at as like a congratulations. I mean, if you work your ass off and then by maybe the third or fourth shot you're there and you get signed, then congratulations. Yeah. You've now put pen to paper. That's a whole different ball game. But anybody can get picked to do a dark match or security or anything like that.
Yeah, I just think that some of the guys that we talked about should have that opportunity, and I don't know what the higher ups in more or less AEW thinking when no offense, Tony can't book. I don't know what the hell he can't book. It's terrible. And these guys and this area is a hotbed right now for wrestling talent.
It is.
I mean,
sure. Obviously, Brandon and I trained Lee, and I check in on Lee. And one of the things that a good trainer should do is check in on any of their talent that's signed, because the one question that comes out of my mouth to Lee is, how are you mentally? Because when you take a guy who's used to doing, 20, 30-minute matches on the indies every single weekend, a couple times during the weekend, to an 8-minute match on television with a fucking commercial in the middle, it's not what it used to be. So mentally, it gets to people. And that's something that's very important to me that I ask Lee. And, he says he's doing okay, and that's fine. But you got to make sure these guys mentally are okay, because it's cool that you're signed to a contract. But 9 times out of 10, if you're not in a storyline and on TV every week in a prominent way, that plays on your psyche, right? because it's not your full potential. I think that Lee is one of the best wrestlers in the world. Has he had time to showcase that? I don't think so. It was just scratching the surface when he was able to have the matches with like Bryan Danielson and I think it was Jericho and whoever else he was out there with. Punk. He had that match with Punk. And keeping them fresh is key, obviously, on television because their roster's fucking
loaded, too loaded
through the roof. There's so many people that just don't even get used. And then, like I said to him, when I went to State College to see them when they were up there, because he hit me up and was like, "Yeah, I'm going to be here." I was like, "Cool." So my son and I went up because my son loves just going to whatever. And we met up with Lee beforehand, was talking, and then we were talking later in the show after Collision. And this is the thing that gets me. Like, I feel like watching their show live is like where WWE went through 20 years ago. In between all their segments and everything, the lights are down, people are just talking, and then you get the announcer up, and he's not very flavorful, so it's like, oh, blah 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 blah. Okay, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, back, and they're back from commercial. But then, you see all these pictures of the empty arenas, right?
Right.
Let's use reality. That's how the arena is booked. It has nothing to do with not filling the arena. The same reason WWE had their NXT show booked that same way. They didn't fill the whole arena because they don't want to. It's not what they're selling to. So, but the thing that sucks is like after this 2-hour show on a Saturday night, now they're going to tape 13 matches for Ring of Honor. So I sent Lee a text. I said, "When are you up?" And he's like, it was like 6 or 7. I was like, "What the fuck?" He's like, "It's 13." I was like, "Holy shit." So
that's ridiculous.
And he went out and he had like a 6 to 8 minute match, and that was it. But it was like fucking 11:15 at that point.
Right.
Main event was going on for Ring of Honor close to quarter to midnight. So
and from State College to Pittsburgh, you're looking at a 2.5 hour drive.
Oh, brother, don't worry. I got a hotel in Altoona.
Okay. But I mean, still, it's
Sure.
it's too much, and it's just too much.
Sure. So as an average fan, that's way too much, right? And again, now you have Ring of Honor taping, but as it's going, what's happening with time? When time is going that late, people are trickling out of the arena. So they went from like probably, again, I don't know the number. We'll call it 5,000 people for Collision, right? After that show, it dropped to about 1,500 for Ring of Honor tapings, to the point where they were ushering in people into spots so it looked good on television from the camera side, right? And then probably by the end of the show, 700 people were left, if that. And I was over on the side with Lee and Shane Taylor, and we were talking, and it was good to see them. I haven't seen Shane in so long.
Right.
It was one of those things where I was like, man, this is crazy. And even Lee was like, "You driving home tonight?" I was like, we'll see. I started looking at hotels at that point. I was like, I don't want to take a chance of driving with the boy, falling asleep. So I ended up just getting a hotel in Altoona. But God, man, and who knows? You might have people drive in longer than 2 hours to see that show. I know people.
Yeah, it's crazy.
5 hours just to see WWE when they run there. But God, I don't know. I just, I like to stay in tune. I'll message Thea every so often.
Yeah, speaking of that, so now the concept that you just told me when you check on the people that you trained in the I've never heard that before. No one's ever said that before.
Yeah.
That I have heard trainers or whatever, they just like, "Oh, well, I trained him and so." They don't call him up and say, "Hey, how are you seriously doing?"
Yeah.
So what you just told me a couple minutes ago, I've never heard that before.
Yeah, I think it's important. You got to stay grounded, and you got to make sure they're grounded, and not a lot of people, to your point, they're like, "Yeah, I train blah, 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 blah," and they're over here doing it and da, 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 da. But everybody's got their own unique styles,
Yeah, but calling them up and see how they're truly are. Hey, how's it going? And just talking to them, like
Mhm.
not even as a trainer, just as a friend or something like
Sure.
that. That's because you guys had a couple. So well, I don't want to go ahead, but let's go to how did you get to be the trainer at the Stronghold facility? How did that become?
Well, so everybody left PWX, and Brandon had already gone and started Ryse. Brandon and I have always stayed very close.
Okay.
So what the hell happened? COVID happened, right?
Ooh, yeah.
And honestly, if it wasn't for COVID, I believe there would be another company in Pittsburgh. Just saying.
Yeah, and I would probably agree with you on that. But the thing is, though, that is the first time and probably the only time that everybody got together and it was a team unity thing, and I love that. I love that concept.
Mhm.
I loved what it was all about. I loved what we were trying to do, and COVID fucked us.
Yep. Financially, it just wasn't able to happen. So
Right.
um, I ended up getting COVID really bad, to the point where I had a lot of symptoms for like 6 to 8 months.
Holy shit.
Um, First, I had COVID, which was the worst
Yeah,
part
because
of
I
it.
think I seen it where you were like, "Hey, I have it," and
Yep.
yeah, I seen it. Yeah.
Uh, in and out of the hospital, coughing up blood. Like I was
Wow.
fever, everything was bad. Right after I had COVID, I got pneumonia real bad. So
Oh, jeez.
then I was finding myself like going to work, staggering through the day, coming home, sitting in front of a humidifier, just trying to breathe. My lung was killing me. After a while, I got to the point where they checked me and realized that I had a little bit of damage on my left lung. And so now
Oh man.
I got an inhaler that I had to use, and they put me on steroids and everything else, trying to help me out. So from one Christmas to the next, I was battling the issues with COVID. I had to go through tests on my heart, lungs, everything to make sure I didn't have blood clots. Like it was a mess, right?
Wow.
So um, after I got through the thick of that, and then finally seeing like where I was physically, I gained a shit ton of weight, which sucked because I just literally shut down every day. So I went to, I was right before that, I was getting ready to I was talking to Brandon about coming in and doing stuff. So I was actually in decent shape. I was only about 280. And I've always been pretty decent with cardio, never really had an issue breathing. But then once that hit, so it was like, okay, now I got to use an inhaler every day if I need to. If I lose, I'll just randomly like lose all the air out of my lung, right? So I started training again and realized, I can't go on the treadmill like I used to. I can't do everything like I used to. So I started to have to make like adjustments, and I gained a ton of weight. I went up to about 360 pounds,
Wow.
and never been that big in my life.
No,
And
I feel you. I go through it too, man. I'm been,
yeah,
in my life too. It's hard. So
it was
I know where you're
brutal.
coming from.
So I was like, oh God, and wasn't doing anything with wrestling. And I'm like, I need to fucking do something. And so I don't know what the hell it was. Talking to Brandon one day, and he's like, hey, um, I got this school. And I was like, yeah, how's it going? He's like, good. He's like, there's open days if you want to train. And I was like, oh, fuck. All right, why not? So Brandon and I had already started training together when we were at PWX. We started this running the school down there, which is where Lee and a couple other guys went through, Helmsley and God, who else was down there? Lawless went through, Laura Loveless, a couple other people, Honey Badger. But either way, we had a few people under our belt from training then, and he was like, "What do you think about training together again?" And I was like, "Fuck!" I was like, "Him and I usually see everything eye to eye." and it's a good mesh when it comes to training. So the way I look at it is, we were talking, I was like, literally, Brandon's one of the best wrestlers in Pittsburgh.
He doesn't get his just due.
No. And so I was like, man, we can really create something special here. You know how to wrestle. I know how to wrestle, but I also have the big guy factor that I can bring to the table too. So him and I ended up hooking up, started running the school, and, going to the school and working out there and having the students and stuff really kind of helped me get them ahead on. And, I ended up losing like 45 pounds.
Nice.
I'm still over where I want to be. I'm still at about 320, but it just takes the will to do it, which, once I get through healing up this arm, no, I'm not saying I have another run in me. God, let me fucking say that first and foremost. If anybody says anything, I don't give a fuck about your spot. I don't care. I'm doing it for me.
Right.
And obviously longevity of health and being around for my kids and everything, I'm going to try and get myself back to where I've always been, which is like 275.
Yeah, that's a good weight to have too, because you can move. Yeah, I like to get down that far too. So I feel you, man.
But yeah, Brandon, again, Brandon doesn't get his flowers with how good he is. And not just as a wrestling trainer, like as a human being. Like Brandon's
nice guy. Super nice guy. That fight underground, when everybody got together, it was something that I've never ever seen in a business or where I ever see again. And when people like you and him going down there, and going down there, and when I went down to that one show, you guys come out and gave me a hug and stuff. I'm telling you, that shit's, to me, I got chills, because that stuff is real for me. I appreciate it, and I mean, that's just the respect factor, and you just don't know anymore when you're going to see anybody. You know what I mean? So
no, time gets a lot further in between than it used to be. But just him, everything he's done, just to build up not just the school but that company of his. He puts his heart and soul, blood, sweat, and tears into that thing.
Oh, yes, he does. Yes, he does, because you guys got it to in Fayette County, because it's based in Fayette County, correct?
Yeah,
I believe it is. Yeah, it's just got for the best entertainment or something, and that is hard to do with those contests, because I know, and you got to try to promote and sell yourself and get people to vote. So having people vote for that is phenomenal. So
yeah, that was really cool. That was a nice nod for him and Christy and his parents. They put a lot of hard work into just building that brand out there. And it's Uniontown. It's not like he's traveling in different cities. Like he picked his spot. That's where it is. And he was running some shows, Baldwin for a little bit, but for the main part, out in Uniontown is where the shows have been, or he was running that theater up in,
right. Oh, is it Connellsville?
Near Connellsville, yeah. It's something else, but I can't remember. But near Connellsville, I mean, getting out of that theater, I think, was a great thing for him, because the theater atmosphere was cool, but it was an old fucking theater. It was dingy looking. So getting out of there and getting into a fresh building where you can build your own barriers is huge. So again, it's to full circle this. Yeah, Brandon, having me to the school and training again, I can't thank him enough, just being there for me when I was down and just giving me the opportunity to come out there,
Is it you and him, or
him and I are the
main
trainers? Yep. And then Ron Hunt comes out and he helps with the training also. So it's one of them things where a lot of people show up there, and not just people that are on Ryse shows. There's people that train there that are from other companies, because they know what they're getting. Yeah.
See, you don't.
I'm not going to drop those names though, because I don't want to get anybody in trouble.
No. I'm no, but I'm not. No, I would never ask you to do that. I'm just saying that you have other people from other companies coming to train in your facility, and there's no bullshit, and everybody just wants to make the business fucking better. Like that's a no brainer.
Yeah.
Like I can't. and then Rev doesn't get his dues either. Rev
No.
he's phenomenal.
He's a hardworking motherfucker, that guy.
Yes, he is. He's every fucking where, winning belts,
Yeah.
doing stuff. And I remember
Yeah.
that one time, and I always said somebody said he smelled like he smells like money to me. So that was I have the utmost respect for him. Every time I see him when I try to watch a show, he's very respectful, and I wish him all the best too. And so it's the three of you guys.
Yep.
Okay. So how many do you have like in a class? Do you have like advanced class, beginning, and all that, or you just work them all together?
Yeah, certain days. So, one day will just be for beginners. And then there's the like mid-level. And then another day will just be for people who coming in to work matches, the advanced guys, and just work on stuff, do matches and stuff, promos, whatever. I mean, the facility has, a gym, so anybody comes in, they can lift, just to come in and lift and work out. They don't have to just come down to get in the ring. Like if somebody who's advanced comes down on a beginner's day, they just go in and start working out. It's no big deal. If we're there, it's open. And
where's it located? Is it located in the same place as where you guys have the shows?
So no. So where the shows are at, we're on the other side of the mall. Next to there's a gym over there that does like CrossFit and stuff. We're located on the opposite side in the back end of the mall. So the shows are run out of the old Sears building of Uniontown Mall, and then we're right on the opposite side around the mall, into the corner there on the back end.
Okay, because that show when I was down there, see, I'm always looking at seating and I'm looking at the business oriented stuff. And I told my fiance, which is now my wife, I was like, "Oh my God, Tammy, this
congratulations, by the way."
Thank you so much. I go, Tam, they could put 1,000 people down here in this building. I go, this could be the biggest. This is bigger than anything. Anybody else in any other company could not. You could put 3 companies into that building. And I'm like, oh my God, this is great. And I'm like,
so where we were when you were there last was the Burlington store, the old Burlington store.
Oh, so you moved then?
So we moved to the opposite side, over on the side where the flagpole's at. That's the old Sears building.
Okay.
We're in there now. Same thing, lots of space.
Because you can always build more. You can bring more chairs in, and then it's just phenomenal. And then you could have the tables, the gimmick tables I saw when I was there at that one time was placed around, in good locations. And wow.
And I don't know if you caught any of the pictures or stuff from the anniversary show, but Brandon did a huge upgrade to the entrance. There's like a 10-foot video wall now, 10 foot high. And it's cool because some of the photos, it kind of reminded me of like how old school WWF shows were. Remember when they just had the video wall and the entrance was right there? So like there was a couple shots. There's one of Money's shot walking to the ring from the opposite side of the building, and all you see is this giant fucking screen in the background with their faces on it saying Money shot, and you see the crowd around the ring and everything else. It just looks so. It was an old look for me, which I loved because nobody around here has any kind of giant video walls or anything. A couple guys use projection screens, but just to incorporate that into the entrance, like I'm a firm believer with any company, like your presentation is 60% of what you have.
Yeah.
And the other is the wrestlers you put into it. If your presentation looks like shit, that's the first thing people see. It's not wrestling. Wrestling's not the first thing people see. The first thing people see is your ring, your entranceway, your setup. That's the first thing people see. So if that looks like shit, you're setting the precedence for what your show is going to look like.
Yep. So, and you guys you just did your anniversary show.
Yeah.
And I couldn't make it because I wanted to, but I had a family thing to do. But you had a lot of titles getting exchanged.
Yeah. Great show.
So let me ask you one question. Because I this is the promoter in me, and this is the man, like Money Shot and the Rad Boys. Do they remind you of the Rock and Roll Midnight Express?
They had a very good series, and yes, I would agree with you. They had
just anywhere they go, people should book those guys just on that merit alone.
Yeah, and here's the thing, and I'm completely honest when I tell people about their matches and stuff. I don't think and it's funny looking back at that collision of Rock and Roll and Midnight Express. Not everybody gets it at first when they get in the ring with each other. There's a lot of clashing before you figure everybody out, right?
Mm-hmm.
So now to the point where we've gotten, that chemistry is now built to where I don't think that's done. That feud's not over.
Oh my God, no! That is
Never over.
probably. I always put it as like the greatest tag feud on the East Coast.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm always about throwing stuff out there, and I'm sure when I throw stuff out there, people get pissed. But I just see that and having them, the Rad Boys took the title.
Mm-hmm.
God bless them. Those guys are great. And the money shot is, I mean, those guys they're two bulls in a,
Sure.
and then you guys got other guys on your shows. And do you get how long does it take for a typical person to get in the Stronghold? How long does it go until they're actually maybe on a show or some kind of something?
As well I do. Everybody's different, right? On a learning aspect. So does anybody ever walk in and we tell them they're going to wrestle a match in 6 months? Fuck no. Absolutely not. The minimum is 1 year. And that depends on what you put into it. So if the only part of training is, we'll call it every Monday night, and that's all you do, it's going to take you a lot longer.
Take you 3 years.
If you even make it. Because I'm not into just throwing somebody into the system, right? If I have to put my name on you, then you're not just getting thrown into the system. You want to go somewhere else and talk shit and say that we took your money or this and that and the other, and we wouldn't pass you through, and somebody else says, oh, I'll train you to be a wrestler, and then you end up on other people's shows, again, whatever, have at it. I could give a shit less. But it's minimum 1 year. We sit down and give everybody a format. Number one, oh, I can't go to the gym. I don't have the money for it. Okay, cool. Well, we have all the stuff in the other room. You can come here and lift 4 out of 5 days a week if you want to. As far as help with nutrition and eating and stuff, Brandon and I sit down and give them, we sit there and say, okay, well, what's your eating habits now? Mm-hmm. And then here's what it needs to be, and as far as a routine with lifting, helping them with understanding how to lift properly, how to gain muscle, how to gain mass, how to gain, your cardio, and just how to build the temple that is your body, right? Because a lot of times when people walk through the door, they're not built to be a professional wrestler.
When they come in, now is it you and Brandon sit there? Now, when everybody that comes in, do you two are the first people that they meet if they want to sign a contract or whatever? You're there all the time. You guys are there all the time. They come in, they're like, hey, I want to become a wrestler, and then you just give them that spiel, and then you got somebody's like, oh, you know what? I don't, I a year. I think I could do it in 4 months, and you're like, no, you can't. Fucking just just see you later. I mean, but you have somebody has those egos where they think that they could be John Cena in 3 weeks, and it ain't happening.
Well, unfortunately, there are there are trainers, I'll use that term loosely with them, out there who do produce wrestlers in 3 to 6 months. And it's just not smart. It's not healthy. It's not healthy for the business. It's not healthy for that person because you're not learning everything in 3 to 6 months. Even at a performance center level with WWE, which they have the ability to go there every single day, work out in the rings, work out with the gym, and you don't see anybody there getting put on anything 3 to 6 months after they get signed to any kind of deal.
Look at Jade Cargill. Jade Cargill is still somewhere and nowhere on TV.
We're going on almost 2 months now since she got introduced. Nothing yet. Yep. It's all about timing, getting things together. Now, there's a lot of people, and I don't pay attention really to the bullshit that gets put on the internet. Like, oh, they figured out she was just a flash in the pan, doesn't really have any business being there. And it's like, shut the fuck up. It's all about timing. You'll see her at the Royal Rumble.
Yep. And that's that's training for 4.5 months, ready to go every day.
Exactly.
Okay. So they come in, they talk to you, and then they would sign. They would, if they're like honestly into it and they're dedicated and they're like, okay, it's going to take me a year. And then you put them on it. This is the schedule that you guys give them. And what is every day that you guys are open, or 3 days a week, or 4? Or?
It's roughly about 3 to 4 days a week. For the people just beginning, they're like every Monday, right?
Okay.
So we start them off, you got to walk before you can run. Before you even really get in the ring, a lot of it's doing a lot of workouts, calisthenics. But before you do get signed up to anything with coming into the school, we do put everybody through a tryout first.
I was going to ask you that. So they have a tryout, and then if they know it's not for them, thank you. I tried it. It's not for me.
Yep. Either that, or we decide this just isn't a good fit for you. Brandon and I are not.
You're just not going to take somebody's money to get them out there and put them out there.
I'm not going to take no.
Okay.
We will absolutely give people chances.
Okay.
And by giving a chance, that means they get put on like a 3-month probation of here's what it is, in 3 months, in 6 months, in 9 months, we're evaluating to the point where, not just for a new person coming in, but like say you get to a 6-month level and say you're at the point where you're learning up into the point where you do a front flip bump, right? But you can't do a front flip bump. Where do you go from there?
Ooh, yeah. Where do you go?
You can't learn shit. So then you have to come to terms with the reality of what you're looking at. If you have somebody who's scared to hit the ropes, well, okay.
What? Yeah. What do you do?
Wrestler, or at the end of the day, too, you have the people that just don't want to put the effort into it. They want to continue to eat shitty. They want to continue to not drink the quality of water they need, because the first thing we do when we get into the school, when class starts, is everybody runs around Uniontown Mall.
Ooh, shit.
That's the first thing everybody does. And then they get timed. And we have some students, they clear that mall in like 5 to 6 minutes. And I'm not talking about cutting through the middle. That's all the way around the mall. So,
wow.
It's all about building the athlete inside. But, trainers can only take you so far. You have to be willing to do it. And you also have to be willing to understand that if you're not willing to go the extra mile, you're going to get a lot of shit for it. Don't blame me because you're lazy.
Okay.
And if you don't make it, it's because you're lazy. It's not because we're not teaching you the right way of doing things. We go the extra mile to make sure people are set up for success. And as far as our teaching standards, just like how the business should be evolving, Brandon and I are always learning stuff, because with Lee on the AEW side, Thea in WWE.
I know. And she was what, 18 years old?
Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah. How long was she at your training with you guys? And then all of a sudden, Shazam.
I will not take credit for Thea. That is Brandon. She was there, and she just got signed as I was coming in. She only had like a match or two, and then she was signed. But they were on and that's what their thing is, right?
That's what they want. That's what they want.
So she is a pure athlete, which is fantastic. She's doing a great job. And even though I'm not her trainer, like I said, I still reach out to her and send her messages on stuff. And, she's very appreciative of the feedback. And it's one of those things where I may have not been her trainer, but I'm still representing the school.
Sure.
And, Brandon and I check in with people all the time. So,
and representing a school is huge because it's a reflection, your reflection of the school and of the Ryse company on a whole. So you have to hold yourself at a different level than, no offense to anybody that's listening to this podcast, other fucking companies that don't hold themselves in high esteems. Right. Like you've got to play the part. And, so, okay. So I wanted to, so you had numerous people come in, and did you have to tell them, hey, look, so what would be the percentage of you telling people, hey, the probationary period to them, you're just not taking their money like typical wrestling trainers, taking their money and just having it?
So, I mean, realistically, if somebody's fully invested in doing the school and they pass the tryout, I am always very transparent with, treat it like anything you have to bill. Okay. Just pay it off. Because if you pay it off, you're indebted to go and put the effort into it. But we do, just like pretty much every other school does. We will work with everybody if they have to do like a monthly or whatever.
Right.
But there was people who came in and they wanted to pay it off. We said, nah, you're on a 3-month probation. We're going to go by month. Because I'm not going to sit there and tell you we owe you any money. Like, it ain't about the give a shit about the money. We don't make any money. We pay the fucking bills. That's all it is.
Right.
So that's why people work real jobs.
Yeah. Now let me ask you: when they graduate, how many graduate have you had since you've been there? A couple. You've had 2 or 3, maybe, or 4 or more.
There's a couple out. I mean, you figure. Just not even with that school. Like Brandon and I have had about a dozen people graduate through us just from back when we were training before to now. And there's a couple on the horizon that are just scratching, ready to get on a show. So there's a couple more ready to come out too. Just timing and finding, what works for them. I try to explain to them, I can't come up with a gimmick. I said, just come up with something simple. You're going to change it anyways. What do you mean? I was like, you're not going to stick to it. Just do something so we can get you on the shows and working. Get some gear made, some simple shit.
Now, do you tell them to go get some real gear, go buy it to make yourself look like wrestlers and not?
Oh, yeah.
I mean, not everybody's going to be John Cena in a pair of shorts and tennis shoes.
No, I'm very open about, don't look like a fucking trash bag when you're out there.
Okay, good. Well, I mean, a lot of trainers have that. I mean, I'm sure other people have that same philosophy. So now let me ask you another question. When you guys have people that graduate and they're on your show and you want them to go out and get more exposure, how do you tell them that? Like, how do you do that? Because some people train people and are like, oh, you can only work for me and you can't work for nobody else, and all that other crazy bullshit that goes on when you know how it goes.
I mean, in hindsight, the thing that sucks about and Brandon's open to working with people. So, the thing about local shows, and this is why I've always looked at it from a double booking standpoint. Like, you can work 2 different shows in a night, but what if on one side you get hurt? Now you can't make the next book, but that other company is relying on you. So I've never been a huge supporter of like double booking.
Yeah, I don't like that either. I don't either. Because that's a good analogy of that. If you get hurt or traffic or your car breaks down or something happens, everything happens.
Or you're going to get the best version of you the first time you go out, not the second time. So if you go to the first show and you have to work a 25-minute match because you're in a high-profile situation, and then you come over and it's like, okay, well, you're in a high-profile situation here too, but you're gassed to the gills, and you got to do another 20, 25 minutes. Guys just aren't built that way anymore. So you're going to get the best version of you here, and then on the other side of the coin, you're not going to get everything you put into it. 9 times out of 10, you're arriving in your gear. If you got to do face paint or whatever, like you just got to slop shit together. And it's just, you don't have time to mathematically make the equation work.
Okay. I like what you're saying on that. Yeah. And I agree with that. And I never thought of it like that either, as you just mentioned that.
And me as a worker, whenever I did double shots, is why I stopped doing double shots, because I was like, fuck, I'm just so worn from the first one. Now I'm driving to the second one. I got to rush around. I'm not eating properly. My body's yelling at me. I get to the other show. You got to rush around. You got to do this and that and the other. You got to get with whoever. And it just, to me, it didn't feel right. I feel like I was shortchanging somebody. So that's why I stopped doing that early in my career, just to I didn't want to do it.
So that's what you tell your trainees when they graduate and stuff like that. You tell them, look, this is, you can do this, but this is what's going to happen aftermath. You're not going to get the whole, people are not going to be paying to see your best at the second time.
Yeah. I mean, and another thing too, like if you can find people who work together, like a couple of us do in this city, get someone on your show.
I'm just going to ask you like that, because lately, if I want to go to a show, there's 3 different shows on the same day. Like, I can't understand that. And then 2 weeks ago, from my house in Indiana, Pennsylvania, there's 5 shows, an hour and a half. I could have went in either direction.
Yeah.
Like that's I just don't know why, because then every other 3 other weeks, every 3 other Saturdays in a month, there's nothing to fucking do.
Right.
But I don't know.
Well, and the thing is, looking at next year, it's going to be a little bit different because of working with people and seeing what dates are and staying away from their dates.
That's I commend you on that, because a lot of people don't do that.
Yeah, it's something that there was some thought process put into it. But to pat people on the back too, 2 of those shows that ran 20 minutes from each other drew over 500 fans. So
on both sides.
Collaboratively. Yep. So you had about 250, 260 on one end. You had 250, 260 on the other end. And to me, that's a successful draw. You're 2 weeks from Christmas.
Yeah, because
there's a lot of shit going on right now. It's not the best time of the year to draw. So, to have 2 successful shows like that, and then, there's a couple of us on a text thread that, not only do we say, hey, good luck tonight, but it's how'd the show go, and seeing how each other does. And working together is key. If you can work together, it's clutch. Not that all promoters will get along, but
no. Oh my God, no. That's another goddamn fucking podcast episode. Right. But yeah, I mean, I just wanted to get your take on it, because you guys just had that big show last week, your anniversary show, 7 years. And how long have you personally been with Ryse training and the whole kit and caboodle? How many years have you got into Ryse right now?
I think it's about 2 years.
So you've been you've been the head trainer for 2 years. And let me ask you a question. To do anything else besides train for the company? Because I know you do. Everybody does. You can't say. I mean, it's
So here's my thing on with Ryse. Brandon, I will always have Brandon's back. I told him that from the gate.
Gotcha.
And whatever I can do, I'll help you.
Right.
So basically at this point where I'm at, a lot of guys come to me with their matches and ask, like, how does it sound? What would you do? Blah, 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 blah. And then if there's any significant change, they'll run it past Chris LaRusso, who's the booker there, and puts everything together.
So there's like you have more than just 1 or 2, you guys. You have a whole staff of people that are interjecting everything into Ryse Wrestling. So that's what makes it good. A good staff makes a successful company.
Yeah. Okay. Then once the show starts, I'm on the earpiece talking to all the refs and going through everything during the show, and little tidbits here, little tidbits there, giving them their little bit of countdowns if they need it or whatever. But during the whole show, I'm in the ear of the ref the whole time.
All right. So where do you see? Because this year's, Don, you guys just did your 7th anniversary. You guys are be placed in, you switched from where you guys are at when I was at that one show to Sears.
Yep.
And that's the only place that you guys run. That is your home right there. You don't, unless you get like say a paid show or something like that, you'll take it. But more than likely that's your house right there.
Yeah. And there's a couple of new things burning on the irons for next year, but to your point, like paid shows, a couple of extras here and there, only to help, obviously. But the home is going to be right there at that building in Uniontown. So unless
when's your next show?
The next show is, forgive me because I don't remember nothing.
That's okay.
Our next show is. Oh my goodness!
I'm sorry.
I can't get my electronics to work.
Oh, probably the first week of January or something. You guys usually run. The second week of every month, probably. I think that's what you guys do.
13th.
Okay, yeah, that'd be about the second week.
I believe it's the 13th.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's what because you guys, like some people, I think some people run shows due to the fact that people get paid on paydays or whatever. They do that too, but
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm a stickler on. I like Sunday shows. I just threw it out there.
Who runs
I'm a
Sunday shows nowadays?
hopefully it'll be me.
Oh, you jumping in the ring, Bubba.
No, I'm not jumping. I'm looking to get my promoter's license, and
Okay.
yeah, just here's my idea before I go to another topic here before we get out of here.
Okay.
I want something where a show where I'm going to get your opinion.
Okay.
All the wrestling companies can book one match on the show if I have it.
Okay.
And they can book the outcome. So it's
Okay.
a Ryse heavyweight title match on the show that I'm doing.
January 13th, February 10th, March 9th, April 13th, May 11th, my birthday. Hopefully they got something planned special for me. No, I'm just joking.
A big sugarless cake probably or something like that.
There you go.
But something, and I will promote when you guys do stuff. I usually do it on my Friday show, and I always share all your posters and stuff like that because I just try to help wherever I can.
Yeah.
But my idea, I want to get my promoter's license,
Okay.
is to have a show where some of the matches are from different companies and they can book their outcome. I'm not booking the outcome of a Ryse Wrestling or by the grace of God, if Plummer would give an IWC match on the card and make it like whatever. It's not a company. It's just all these companies together showcasing some of the best that are best. But some people told me it would never ever fucking work, or I would never ever do that, Bubba. You're fucking crazy. But I mean, I am a little crazy, but I just want something where if I can go where, it showcases everybody's best talent in one match. They're booking it, and if it's on a Sunday, it's not competing. I don't want to compete with anybody. I don't want to do that, and something like that. I'm asking your advice and your opinion while I got you on the show. Do you think it would work?
Yes, with people who are not stuck up their own asses.
Okay, thank you. Okay. And you guys aren't those people that are stuck up on your own asses, because actually LaRusso contacted me, and he's like, "Hey, Bob, I heard," and I was like, "Yes." I said, "Once I get it," I said, "I'll be," you know what I mean? And that's what the concept that I just maybe want to do one show a year. That's it. Use my license and then try to help out.
Idea.
Well, and I know it's very stressful to do wrestling shows. I know you guys.
Hold on, Bubba. I got an idea for you. Give me 1 second. I got an idea. Hold on.
Oh, geez.
Hold on.
I can only imagine. I can only imagine, people.
It's gonna be awesome. Hang tight.
Well, I'm hanging tight because I know you got good ideas because you know what you're talking about. Sometimes I do not know what I'm talking about. That's why I do the show. Which, it's
yeah. All right. Okay. I got a great idea. You ready?
Okay, I'm ready. Is that what I think it is?
That, with my one arm, is what you think it is. Just saying.
Okay. Yeah, because I have to do everything with the license APWF presents. That's it.
Funny fact that you say APWF, you realize when I first started, I was on one of your shows in a battle royal outside somewhere. I can't remember where it was.
I bet you it was at the Rose Inn in Ernest, Pennsylvania. It was at a bar, wasn't it? Yeah.
It may have been. But
God bless you.
I don't. You were still working then.
Yeah.
It was one of my first couple of battle royals and first shows that I had done was for APWF.
Oh, well, God bless you.
It was a free show. I didn't get paid.
We didn't make any money. Didn't make any money. I mean, and I feel as I look back upon it, like I could have done stuff differently and stuff, but there was a lot of egos back then too.
Sure.
So
sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, God bless you on that. Yeah, I was at the Rose Inn. It was the outside show, Ernest, Pennsylvania. Yeah. So I love this chat, man. This is phenomenal.
We're
But I
over
got a
2
couple.
hours at this point.
I don't care. I don't care. I that's just the way it is. I don't care. This is, hey, you got stuff that is people in around here should listen to this because you have a lot of suggestions and you have a lot of experience that younger people should actually grasp the knowledge that you have.
Appreciate
And I appreciate what you're doing down there at Ryse Wrestling. You and Brandon, all you guys. I think you guys have a great product down there. I enjoyed myself the last time I went. I wanted to go last week and I just couldn't, but I will make it down there in 2024.
Well, you got to come see the new entranceway.
Well, I'm excited now because you said I didn't know you moved.
Freaking huge.
Well, it was huge. The old place was huge, and I was marking out, and I was like, "Oh my god, I see 1,500 people," and I'm like, I told my wife, I go, "This is the biggest area in independent wrestling in the whole this side of the state because if they ever book it, they'd book 2,000 people." And I said, "It's game on, Tammy." I said, "Nobody." So I'm always thinking about stuff, but I got a couple questions I want to, before we get out of here.
Let's go.
What do you do in your spare time? Hobbies?
A lot of my time goes to my kids, involved with them doing soccer. But when I'm not a soccer dad, I'm fishing. I'm trout fishing, man. I'm streaming. I'm out there finding solace in the stream.
Okay. Right on. Good answer. Your favorite movie of all time?
Oh, I mean, that's a no-brainer. Rocky.
Okay. I think I knew that. I think.
Huge Rocky fan.
Well, I know the answer to this one. Your favorite singles professional wrestler of all time, which you already said, but I'll let you say it again.
Brother. Hulk Hogan.
And your number one top favorite tag team of all time.
Oh, man. So, all right. I'm going to give you two things to wrap this up. Two full circle stories. Ready?
Okay.
My favorite tag team was always Legion of Doom, right? Hawk and Animal.
God bless
Which
you.
is why when that went off, I had to, So it's so funny because, and this is kind of like the recap of anybody who gets into the wrestling business. You're a fan, right? So you got to find justification in what you're doing to make sure that when you're done, you don't leave anything on the table. Okay. That's kind of how my wrestling career was. As I told you, I went to that show. I'm like 4 or 5 years old. I'm wearing a Superfly Jimmy Snuka shirt. Huge Superfly fan. Like, I don't know, 18, 19 years later, I'm at an IWC show in a 6-man tag against Jimmy Superfly Snuka. I think it's Newville, PA, right?
See, you can't write that a better script.
No. And guess who's taking the finish? This fucking guy. So I make the hot tag. Snuka comes in and gives me the bah to the throat. I take this big bump. I don't even know if he touched me. And boom, big headbutt. I get set up for the Superfly splash. And I'm like a kid in a candy store, just looking up and realizing that this 260-pound bag of Jello was about to smash the fuck out of me, because at that point in his career, he wasn't stopping, right?
No, he was
but
not.
It didn't matter because it was like I was a kid in a candy store, and that was fantastic. My other second thing too, which was I give credit to Ken that runs Imagine. He did the one show at the it was the biker thing. I can't remember exactly what it was, but he had Animal there, a part of this fundraiser, and I went against the tag team that he was.
I was there. I was at that show.
There, the outside show.
Yes, I was there.
And I got to wrestle in that tag match against his tag team.
It was,
Jack Stain and Crimson.
Yes,
and he was there, and I got to do an outside spot with him hitting me. And
I was at that show. Yeah, that was awesome.
It was fantastic. And then the biggest cap on my feather, him and I were talking the whole night, which was great. And when he's giving the boys a speech in the locker room, he looked over me. He's like, talk to this guy. He's been around the globe. He knows what's going on. Him and I talked earlier. He got his shit together. He knows it. And I'm like, holy fuck, Animal is pointing at me and talking about how I know something. This is great. But you know, and that's actually the first night that I met Spencer Slade, which you know, I wish nothing but the best for Spencer, because he's
on power now. He's tagging up in power. Yeah, I mean, everybody that we talked about in some way is doing good in the business.
Yeah.
You know, and then the guys you said, you know, that were up when I was up and a little older, like T and all those other guys, you know, God bless them. You know what I mean? Like, you could write a book on Pittsburgh and Western Pennsylvania wrestling. It'd be like 7 volumes thick.
Man.
You know, and I think they probably need something around here like a I don't know, like a convention or something. We all get together and just shoot the shit and do something like that. That'd be great.
Yeah,
that would be great. That costs, well, I always have great ideas, but you know how it goes.
Whatever happened to the Western Pennsylvania Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame?
I think Neil still does that, but I don't know where it's at. He has everything, but I don't know where.
I haven't heard anything about it for a long time.
Yeah, a couple of years, because I know Paul went in. I went in.
I mean, the last time I heard anything was when Paul went in.
Yeah, and I think maybe funding. It's hard to say anymore. I don't know, but I mean, something and that would be great. A big convention, everybody, because I like to see people too. And there's a lot of people and thank God for social media, so you can actually see some people and see what's going on. Yeah. So I got a couple more questions. What goals do you want to accomplish in the new year coming in 2024?
My number one goal is to be a better version of myself, mentally, physically, setting the example of, you know, not just for my kids, but my students. Like, you got to practice what you preach to, and be able to do things. And for me, it's about just getting a better health standard and losing a little bit of weight, being in a better, you know, healthier living. Just getting a better grasp on that, because as you know, Bubba, time goes faster and you can think about trying to make it any better.
Yep. You know, all of a sudden, I thought about doing something and it's already 6 months later.
Yep.
Yeah. What do you want Dean Radford to be remembered for in the wrestling business? Sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot. I always try to, you know.
You know, I'm not ashamed to talk about whenever I had a higher point in what I was doing. And yes, I had an ego, just like a lot of people get, right? Mm-hmm. And I'm going to talk about the most humbling moment of my wrestling career before I talk about what I want to be remembered by.
Okay.
The most humbling moment in my wrestling career is something that I didn't even remember happening. When I got working with someone, Patrick Hayes, he reminded me of a time when he came to IWC for a tryout, and it was me and Doe and a few others. And basically, with him doing his tryout, I told him it was the shits, which I'll tell people there's stuff the shits now. Well, but either way, I had a hand in him not getting that second look, I guess. And I apologized, because I don't ever want to be that person. Patrick and I are very close. He may also be a Hulkamaniac, but you know, it's one of those things where I want to be remembered as the guy who was humble and willing to help people, and not the guy who just gave a shit about his own spot, because that's not what it's all about. Yes, when you're riding a high, and if you're signed to a contract somewhere, you don't want to let that top spot go. Austin said that several times during documentaries. You don't ever want to let that go, because that's your money chain, right? Mm-hmm. But as it is for us, you know, there needs to be more working together. And when I say working together, it's know what the guy in front of you and behind you is doing in the match, so you're not doing the same shit. Take note to talk to each other in the locker room. This is where agents are extremely important to shows, because you don't want the whole show to be 15 back body drops, 10 suicide dives, 15,000 super kicks, everything molds together at that point. There's no mystique to people who look the same.
Yeah.
So my biggest thing about it is I want to be remembered for being humble and helping people get to that next level. And Patrick is fantastic. I felt terrible after that. And, I never got a chance to work with Patrick. I probably won't get a chance to work with Patrick, but he is somebody who has the ability to go out there and put on a 5-star match. Him and Troy Lords went out there and did a 60-minute match. And I think like 10, 15 minutes into it, Troy broke his wrist and they went the whole length of the match. They had a great match. And it's guys like that who can go out there and take it in and put on something spectacular and special to make a difference in this business.
Great answer. One word that describes Dean Radford.
Oh,
I'll give you 2.
Let's go with asshole.
I would never think of that. No.
Jesus. Depends on what years we go through. Let's see here. I'd say a good listener. I'm a good listener. I listen a lot. I take a lot in from people before I make any kind of assumptions.
Wow. Well, that's a good answer too. Wow. And I listened to your story this is a big accomplishment because you have the stories that you had and the experiences that you have are phenomenal. And yeah. I commend you on, wrestling. I commend you training, down at Ryse and doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
And just training and teaching the guys of tomorrow to get them to where they need to be. And I always had the utmost respect for you, brother. And you know what I mean? And I'm glad we got to do that fight underground. I wish it would have been a little bit more whatever, but still,
you never know.
I know. You never know. And also too, we've been trying to plan this for such a long time.
Sure.
So anytime that you want to come on, my Friday show and plug any of Ryse and stuff, man, you always have an open invitation. If you just want to come on and shoot the shit and do whatever, man, you always have an open invitation here to the Experience show. So, Dean, do you have anything you want to plug before you get out of here?
Well, I mean, obviously Ryse Wrestling, running monthly. I kind of shot some of the stuff out there already as far as the dates for the beginning of the year. So you can catch them on Facebook, look for Ryse Wrestling. And then on Twitter also. I'm going to pull the handle up real quick because like I said, I don't remember anything.
That's all the years of working in the ring. I don't remember
much
either.
So on Twitter, it's at Ryse Wrestling. And then with the school, same thing, Stronghold Training Center. And on Twitter, it's at Stronghold Tough. So you can go on there. Social media.
I will have links. Everybody, I'll have links on the YouTube and I'll have links on the Spotify because when I get done with this, I'm putting it out to the massive media because a lot of the boys want to hear your they want to hear this interview.
There's going to be a few people who are probably disappointed because I didn't go off on anybody, but you didn't trigger me with anybody.
Well, no, I mean that's okay. You did great. I mean, hey, sometimes we don't have to do that. Like,
I thought you were going to be like, who's the best promoter in Pittsburgh? Who's the worst promoter in Pittsburgh? I was ready to dish it to you.
I know you, and I think everybody has a small piece of the pie. Sure. I think everybody, like I say, I wish everybody wouldn't work on run on the same fucking day because I can't go to everything. But also too, I wish everybody would work together because when I went to Florida, I always tell the story. When I went to Florida, they were shitting on us up here in Western Pennsylvania, down in Florida. You know what I mean? They just thought, you know what I mean? And when I came back to Florida, from Florida, I told people, I was like, hey, look, guys, you gotta play a certain way. And I'm not saying that I've done a lot of, I fucked up too in my lovely wrestling career, promoting and doing whatever. I'm not, I take full ownership, and I wish I'd have done more for people. And, I hope maybe I can do more. And this podcast and doing this stuff is my thing to try to get interviews with the great guys in the business and I love hearing the stories, man. You had some the Arizona stuff was great, man. I love that. That was awesome. So, I mean, Dean, anytime you want to come on, brother, let me know. I hope your injury heals up.
Appreciate it.
If you got a couple more stuff to lace up the boots, if somebody calls you out, because someone will call you out. I mean, I'm sure they will. Yeah. So I do appreciate
You know who's chomping at the bit to get a piece of me? I'll tell you one person.
Who?
Lights out Johnny Norris. He's chomping at the bit. He wants me in the ring so bad. I said, get a fucking ticket, bud.
Him and T. I saw that match where he worked T. He took T's vest off. I go, holy shit, it's all over but the crying. They're like two big guys. I like that two big guy stuff. So yeah, Johnny Norris. If you're listening to this, if you call him out and he's healthy, you might fucking rule the day that you fucked off in Radford.
He's gonna have his chest split open by two turkeys.
Well, brother, thank you so much for coming on, man. We wanted to do this, and like I said, anytime. It was you had some great shit, man. It was good stuff.
I appreciate you, Bubba.
No, thank you. I appreciate you, Dean. Thank you very much. Everybody, thank you for tuning in. I'll get this out as quick as possible. So everybody, thank you. And Dean, we'll be seeing Ryse Wrestling very soon in 2024. Any wrestlers that want to try to become a wrestler, go down there to train. I'll have all the links. Everybody, good night. And thanks again, Dean.
Later. Thank you so much. Have a great night.